Horror movies have been using the same tricks for decades. These tropes are so common that now we just hate them. The last one that I'm going to talk about today is so hated that it's literally made audiences boo in theaters. So let's start out with something simple that everyone is aware of. Jump scares. The thing every horror movie does when it has nothing else to offer. You know the setup because you've seen it 900,000 million billion times. A character walks down a dark hallway, music gets quiet, and then BAM! Something jumps out with a noise so loud your neighbor thinks someone's getting murdered. You just experienced the cinematic equivalent of someone poking you and yelling, "Gotcha!" The Nun from 2018 is basically a masterclass in annoying your audience for 90 minutes straight. This movie has so many jump scares that critics literally started counting them. We're talking over 40 separate moments where the film just screams at you and hopes you'll mistake that for being scared. There's this one scene where the main character walks through an abbey corridor, which is already creepy enough on its own, but no, the movie doesn't trust that. So a demon nun lunges at the camera with a sound effect that sounds like someone dropping a piano down a staircase. Terrifying? Not really. Startling? Yes, for half a second. Then you're sitting there thinking about how you could have watched something actually scary instead, like the Teletubbies. Annabelle from 2014 pulls the exact same garbage. The whole movie is just waiting for the next loud noise to show up. You've got this potentially interesting story about a possessed doll, which could be genuinely disturbing if they actually tried, but instead they just have doors slam and violins screech at random intervals. It's exhausting. Horror fans started calling these ooga booga scares because that's how much effort went into them. The thing is, jump scares work when they're earned. I actually like them when they're earned, when there's actual tension building to something. But when you're throwing them in every 5 minutes because the script has nothing else going on, people start checking their phones. Jump scares are cheap, but at least you can't immediately predict who lives. The final girl. Every slasher movie's most predictable feature. You can call who's surviving before the opening credits finish. Look for the girl who's not drinking, not having sex, not doing anything that might be considered fun. That's your survivor. Everyone else is getting stabbed within the hour. Halloween in 1978 created the blueprint with Laurie Strode. She's the responsible babysitter. She's studying. She's got her life together. Her friends Annie and Linda, well, they're living their best lives, which in horror movie logic basically means they're signing their own death certificates. Annie wants to see her boyfriend. She dies. Linda gets a little freaky with her boyfriend. She dies immediately after. Laurie stays pure and virginal, so she gets to live. The movie doesn't even hide what it's doing. It's basically a Sunday school lesson where the moral is don't bang anybody or Michael Myers will stab you. Maybe that's why I'm a final girl at the age of 25. Friday the 13th did the exact same thing in 1980. Alice is the sensible one, so obviously she's making it to the end. Everyone else is busy drinking and hooking up at summer camp, which is apparently a capital offense punishable by death by slasher. You can guess who's dying in what order based purely on how much they're enjoying themselves. The stoner, dead. The couple sneaking off, super dead. The girl who's just trying to make it through her shift without drama, yeah, she'll be around for the sequel. That's the problem. It's not scary when you know the ending from the beginning. The second you see the shy girl with a sad backstory, you're just sitting there waiting for everyone else to die. There's no tension, no surprise, just crossing off names off a list. Modern horror fans have seen this so many times that they could write the script themselves. Predicting who lives is annoying, but evil kids somehow became even less scary, if that was possible. You know what horror directors think is absolutely terrifying? Children, just regular kids. Well, probably because they don't pay their child support, but anyways, yes, regular children, but make them stare at nothing for a while. That's it. That's the whole plan. Give a 6-year-old some contact lenses, tell them to look dead inside, and apparently that's supposed to keep us up at night. Hey, you didn't even need contact lenses for me when I was 6. I just sat there looking like... Yeah, my eyes kind of looked weird when I did that because I had surgery on them when I was 10 years old, like major surgery, like knife inside my head surgery. So if you laughed or made fun of me, you're now canceled. Congrats. Go to your place before I shock you. Sarcasm alert. Do not shock your dog. Anyways, creepy kids worked in 1976. I'll give them that. The Omen came out and people lost their minds over little Damien. This kid who's secretly the Antichrist, causing accidents and death everywhere he goes while looking like he's thinking about absolutely nothing. Back then it was fresh. Nobody had really done the evil kid thing that hard before. But then everybody did it. And I mean everybody. Children of the Corn showed up in 1984 with an entire town of murderous ghost children. I first thought this movie was about kids who just liked eating corn. I was really wrong when I watched it. Anyways, how are these kids feeding themselves? Who does the farming? They killed all the adults. Who's teaching them to read? Look, I grew up on a farm as a kid. It is not an easy job to do. There's no way kids are doing that amount of manual labor. Like, there's no way you're being evil and doing that amount of manual labor. You wouldn't even have time to be evil. Like, who is teaching these kids to read? I'm supposed to be scared, but I'm mainly concerned about their long-term survival prospects. The problem is that evil children became the default setting for lazy horror. Got a ghost? Make it a child. Need a demon? Possess a child. Write a script and can't think of what's scary? Put a fucking child in there. We've seen it so many times now that when a creepy child shows up, audiences don't scream. They groan. Oh good, another dead-eyed kid is gonna draw disturbing pictures and speak in a voice that's not their own. Hello, mommy. I love you and daddy very much. How original. It is 2025. We've all been on the internet. We've seen things way more disturbing than a 10-year-old saying ominous stuff. The trope died somewhere around 2005 and nobody bothered to tell Hollywood. But moving on, the killer refuses to die. You've watched the hero stab them, shoot them, set them on fire, chop them up into bits, and finally they collapse. Everyone takes a breath, crisis over. Except we all know what's coming next because we've seen it in literally every horror movie since 1978. The camera holds on that body just a little too long. There's about 3 seconds of silence, and then their eyes snap open, or they sit up, or they grab someone's ankle. Congratulations, you just wasted 20 minutes of fighting because nobody thought to check if the murderer was actually dead. Halloween started this whole meth. Laurie Strode fights off Michael Myers, stabs him multiple times, and he finally drops. She's crying, traumatized, thinking it's over. Then his body just sits up behind her in one smooth motion, and the audience absolutely lost it. This was genuinely shocking in 1978, because I asked my parents. I'm not that old, I wouldn't know. But the problem is every single horror movie after that copied it. Jason Voorhees does it, Freddy Krueger does it, Freaky Freddy Fazbear does it. Every slasher villain has this magical ability to get back up no matter how dead they should be. Michael got shot 6 times by a doctor and still walked away. That's not scary, that's just annoying. Scream knew this trope was already tired by 1996. There's this whole scene at the end where Randy literally tells everyone that the supposedly dead killer always comes back for one last scare. And right on cue, Billy springs up and Sydney shoots him in the head. She's done with this. The movie's making fun of how predictable it all is, and somehow horror films still kept doing it anyway. The double tap rule exists for a reason in the Zombieland movies. Finish the job, but characters in horror movies have apparently never seen a horror movie, so they'll knock out the killer and then just walk away like the threat's been neutralized. Meanwhile, we're all sitting there yelling at the screen because we know exactly what's about to happen. At least dead killers eventually show up again, unlike common sense in haunted houses. Alright, so here's a deal you're being offered. Huge mansion, beautiful architecture, suspiciously cheap price. Only catch is a family died there. Multiple families maybe actually, possibly in horrible ways. You taking that deal? Well, maybe in 2025 you might, because like buying a home is not possible, but if you're a normal person and this is a normal time in history, of course not, because you have a functioning brain. But horror movie characters, they'll sign that damn lease before the reels are finished is the last sentence. The Amityville Horror from 1979 is the blueprint for every haunted house movie you've ever seen. Family moves in, freaky stuff starts happening immediately, they decide to tough it out because apparently leaving is not an option. There's flies everywhere, doors slamming on their own, walls bleeding, and the dad slowly losing his mind. At no point does anyone suggest maybe they should go stay with the relatives for a bit. They paid a deposit and they're committed to seeing this through even if it kills them, which it very nearly does. The movie was scary when it came out because the setup felt fresh and they claimed it was based on real events, which is a big fat lie, but whatever. I love lying on the internet. Who am I to judge? I've said a million things to you guys that are completely false. I've never had an ex-wife. Then Hollywood saw that people liked haunted houses and just made the same movie 800 more times. By 1999, when The Haunting remake came out, audiences had seen every haunted house trick in the book. That film has moving statues, evil fireplaces, ghost children, secret rooms, the whole package. It threw so much at the screen that it stopped being scary and started being kind of funny. The house is clearly evil from the moment they arrive. It's got gargoyles on every surface and looks like where nightmares go to die. But the characters act shocked when supernatural stuff starts happening. What did you expect? It's called Hill House and it looks like a villain's lair. Staying in evil houses is just dumb. But exorcism movies somehow got even more repetitive with their tropes. Possession movies peaked in 1973, and nobody has had an original thought about demons ever since. The Exorcist came out and changed horror forever. A little girl gets possessed, priests show up, there's vomiting and head spinning, and the most disturbing religious showdown ever filmed. Also, they hurt children on the set of this movie, and maybe that wasn't a good idea, but it made a lot of money, so here we are. People fainted in theaters, some got sick. It was genuinely traumatic for audiences who had never seen anything that intense before. And the credits rolled and every studio executive said, okay, great. Let's do that exact thing forever. Fast forward to 2012 and we get The Devil Inside, which was the name of my alter ego when I was 12. This movie has all of the possession's greatest hits. Girl gets possessed, starts talking in a demon voice, body contorts in ways bodies shouldn't contort, priests tried an exorcism while yelling in Latin. You've seen this a million times. The movie even has multiple possession scenes because I guess they figured out if one is scary, 5 must be terrifying. Spoiler alert. It doesn't work that way. Watching the same exorcism happen over and over just makes you more bored. But here's the best part. The movie doesn't have an ending. It just stops. They're driving, there's a car crash, cut to black, and the screen tells you to visit a website for more information. Audiences were furious. People literally booed when it happened. You can't spend 90 minutes watching priests yell at demons and then get homework as your conclusion. It is not how good stories work. The problem is possession movies all end the same way now. Demon shows up, someone's body gets hijacked, priests arrive, they shout prayers, holy water gets thrown around, and eventually the power of Christ compels the demon to leave! Sometimes the person dies, sometimes they don't, but the steps are always identical. There's no surprise left. We're just waiting for them to get to the Latin chanting part so we can leave. Let's now talk about phones. If you didn't know, phones don't work in horror movies. That's just the rule. You're being chased by a maniac. You pull out your phone to call the cops, and there is no signal. Every single time. Doesn't matter if you're in the woods or a small town or someone's house. Your phone becomes a useless brick the second something scary shows up. It's not even subtle anymore. Characters will check their phone and there's this big dramatic moment where they see 0 bars and you're supposed to gasp, but really you're just thinking, yeah, duh, obviously. Look, I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere. My family literally does not have functioning internet still. That's how remote my childhood was. That is an actual area where phone service sucks. I had to deal with that most of my life and still we were able to make calls. I've never been in other places where service just doesn't work. Like if you're in the middle of nowhere, sure, but most areas you're getting at least 1 bar of service in 2025. Wrong Turn from 2003 is peak no signal territory. A group of people get lost in West Virginia, which is fine. Rural areas can have bad service, aka my childhood, but then every phone is dead. All of them. Nobody thought to charge their phone before the road trip. Nobody's got a car charger. It's just perfect phone failure across the board. This is so far-fetched because even when I was a kid, we had the outlet that plugged into the cigarette lighter just so we could charge our Game Boys and DSs in the car. That would have been like 2009, which is only a couple years away from 2003. You get the point. Like everyone's phones just fail across the board. There's even a shot where someone holds their phone up to the sky trying to get reception and it's supposed to be tense, but it's been done so many times it feels more annoying than anything else. We get it. The phones don't work. Don't spend your movie budget on it. They never work. You could set a horror movie in the middle of a cell tower factory and somehow there would still be no signal. The Strangers in 2008 at least tried to make it interesting. The masked killer actually destroys the phones, which is smart. They're not relying on magic bad reception. They're physically taking out the communication. But even then, you're sitting there thinking about how smartphones have GPS and emergency service and all of these features. And the movie has to do backflips to explain why none of that helps. It's exhausting watching movies bend reality just so characters can't call for help. We live in 2024 where everyone's phone works everywhere and horror is still pretending that we're in the Stone Age. Literally ask any of your friends. Most of them are sharing their location with at least one person in their life. Dead phones are annoying, but at least they're electronic. Cars, yeah, they're worse. Picture this. You're running from a killer. You make it to your car. You're so close to safety that you can taste it. You get in, slam the door, jam the key into the ignition of your brand new car that has never failed you once, and the engine makes that clicking sound. You know the one. Click, click, click. Nothing. You try again. Still nothing. The killer's getting closer. You're panicking, turning the key over and over. And the car just refuses to start. Then at the very last second, right as the killer's about to reach you, it finally turns over and you pull out. Seen that before? Of course you have. You've seen it in every horror movie ever made because nobody in a horror owns a car that works properly. Halloween H20 has a scene where the kids are trying to escape Michael Myers and naturally the car won't start. They're sitting there pumping the gas, begging it to work. And Michael's doing his slow walk towards them because he knows knows the car is not starting either. He's seen horror movies. He knows how this goes. Eventually it starts and they escape, but those 30 seconds of engine failure added nothing except time for Michael to get closer. That's all it ever does. It's just artificial tension. Jeepers Creepers pulls the same move. The demon creature is attacking and someone tries to start a truck, and guess what? Engine problems. They even did it twice in that movie because I guess once wasn't enough. The first time you maybe buy it. Old truck, rural area, sure. But when it happens again, you start wondering if everyone in horror movies should just invest in AAA memberships. Or better yet, ride bikes. Bikes don't need ignitions. But then we wouldn't get that thrilling scene of someone frantically turning a key while screaming. Broken cars kill people, but splitting up is basically asking to die. There's this moment that happens in basically every horror movie where someone in the group says, let's split up and search for clues. And you know what everyone should respond with? Fuck no, you're dumb. We're staying together until this is over. That is never what happens, because if characters made smart decisions, the movie would be 15 minutes long. Instead, they all nod and agree that, yeah, covering more ground makes sense, which is how you get 5 people turned into 5 separate murder victims in the span of 20 minutes. Friday the 13th is famous for this. A bunch of camp counselors show up to Crystal Lake and immediately they're all doing their own thing. One goes to check the generator, another's off doing laundry, 2 sneak away to bang. Then Jason picks them off one by one. Nobody thinks, hey, maybe we should travel in groups of 3 at minimum. They're all just wandering around alone in the dark like they've never heard of safety in numbers. The final girl only survives because she's the final girl, not because she's smart. She's just the only one who didn't wander into the woods all by herself. Cabin in the Woods actually explains this trope and somehow makes it funnier. The characters are in danger and one of them says that they should stick together, which is the correct response. But then the people controlling everything pump gas into the room that makes everyone stupid. Suddenly the jock guy announces they should split up and everyone agrees. The movie had to literally drug the characters to make them do something this dumb because there's no other logical reason for it. And you know what? That tracks. The only explanation for why people split up in horror movies is that they're all breathing in some kind of stupid gas that makes them forget how staying alive works. Or they just love Scooby-Doo roleplay. Like Scoob, Reggie, Reggie. Speaking of stupidity, every town near a haunted location has one guy whose entire job is warning people not to go there. He shows up, says something ominous about death and curses, and then just leaves. Doesn't call the cops, doesn't try to physically stop anyone, just delivers this creepy speech and vanishes. And does anyone ever listen to him? Never. Not once in the history of horror has someone heard you're all doomed and thought maybe we should reconsider this trip. Friday the 13th has Crazy Ralph, who literally rides around on a bicycle telling people Camp Crystal Lake has a death curse. Right, Flappy? It has a death curse. A little death curse. He shows up, warns the counselors, and they basically laugh at him, which is fair because he doesn't seem that unhinged, but he's also completely correct. Everyone at that camp dies except one person, and Ralph tried to tell them. He even comes back in the sequel to warn a whole new group of counselors, and they ignore him too. Then he gets killed. Right, Flappy? But he got killed because he was so stupid. Which feels like the universe's way of saying, maybe just stop trying to help people who won't listen. Flapjack said he was sick of y'all, so he's gone now. Sorry. He can't handle the paparazzi. Pet Cemetery had Judd telling Lois not to bury anything in the curse ground beyond the cemetery. Sometimes dead is better, he says, which is pretty clear advice. Don't use the evil resurrection dirt. It seems simple, but Lewis does it anyway and realizes Judd was right when his cat comes back wrong, and then does it again with his dead kid. At that point, you can't even blame the curse. That's just poor decision making. Judd told him exactly what would happen if Lewis decided to find out for himself anyway. The warnings are always right, but characters treat them as flavor text instead of actual information. Some old timer mentions a tragedy from 50 years ago, and everyone's response now is, cool story, bro. Now where's the bedroom? And then they act surprised when the ghost shows up in their bed. Ignoring warnings is stupid, but possessed people bending backwards got really old pretty quickly. Horror movies discovered that if you make a person's body bend in ways bodies don't normally bend, it's disturbing, and they're right. It is, the first few times you see it, but then every possession movie started doing the exact same spine-bending, bone-cracking movements, and it went from scary to basically a required element. Got a demon? Better have someone have noodles for bones. Writing an exorcism screen? Time for some unnatural positions with loud cracks. It's the visual equivalent of hitting the same note on a piano for 40 years. The Exorcist invented this with the spider walk scene where possessed Regan comes down the stairs upside down on all fours. When they added it to the director's cut in 2000, people freaked out because it was genuinely unsettling. A child moving in this insect way while blood drips from her mouth? Yeah, that's nightmare fuel. But then every horror director saw that scene, decided they needed their own version. So now we've got decades of people arching their backs and cracking their joints while making demon noises. The Exorcism of Emily Rose went hard on the contortion stuff. Emily's possessed body bends and twists with these gross cracking sounds that make you wince. The actress did a lot without CGI, which is impressive from a performance standpoint. But by 2005, we'd already seen so many horror movies do the same thing that it felt more like checking a box than actually trying to scare anyone. Possessed person doing yoga from hell? Yeah, we've seen it. Got anything new, or are we just running through the list of required possession visuals? I find the best horror movies out there these days are movies that take concepts we all know and then just flip them on their heads. You know, like, I don't know. Like, we've seen how a possession works. Maybe tell us how a possession, but it's actually a juice box works. I don't know. Come with something new. Spider walk became such a known thing that it's basically a meme now. If this video gets 20,000 likes, I will do the spider walk and post it on YouTube. Someone does a back bend in a horror movie and half the audience is thinking, oh, here we go again. It lost all impact through pure repetition. Bent spines were overused. But killing people just for getting freaky is even worse. Horror movies have this weird thing where they punish young adults for being young adults. Specifically, they punish them for trying to get freaky, as if being intimate with someone you're dating is somehow a crime worthy of death. Well, the formula is dead simple. Two characters sneak off to be alone. They start making out, some of their things come off, and then the killer shows up every time. You could set your watch to it. Meanwhile, the virgin girl who's scared of premarital hand-holding, yeah, she's making it to the credits. Halloween established this whether they meant to or not. Laurie's friends both die right around the time they're getting romantic with their boyfriends. Annie dies on her way to see hers. Linda gets strangled right after sleeping with Bob. And Laurie, who's too busy babysitting to even think about boys, survives the whole night. The movie doesn't come out and say freaky equals death, but the pattern is pretty clear. Be responsible and live. Have fun and get stabbed. It's extremely Puritan for a movie about a masked killer. Friday the 13th just made it even more explicit. Anyone who gets freaky or talks about being freaky becomes a target immediately. The couple that sneaks away from the group to, you know, yeah, Jason's already on his way. There's no being subtle. No, maybe they died for other reasons. The movie straight up uses sexuality as a marker for who's getting killed. And then this became the standard for basically every slasher in the 80s. Horror movies turned into weird morality plays where the punishment for being a normal young person is violent death. Cabin in the Woods called this out by having the evil organization literally refer to one character as the whore who has to die first. Please keep in mind, those are not my words. They spike the environment to make sure she gets freaky so they can kill her according to the rules. The movie's making fun of how rigid and obvious the trope is, but also showing that, yeah, this is genuinely what horror does. Moving on to more horrible tropes, horror has this representation problem that's so obvious it became a joke decades ago. You watch a movie with a mostly white cast and there's one black character. At first you're like, yay, diversity, but then you realize, you just know. You know that they're not making it to the end. Sometimes they don't even make it past the first act. It is so predictable that people started calling it out before the movies even started, which is maybe the clearest sign that, yeah, this is a real pattern and it's gotten old. And it's probably like some deep-seated racism, whether people meant for it to be or not, but yeah, Scream 2 opens with Jada Pinkett Smith and Omar Epps at a movie theater. Jada's character actually says out loud that she's tired of horror movies where the black character dies. She's complaining about the trope while being in a horror movie, which you think would save her through sheer meta awareness. She and Omar are the first two people to die. The movie acknowledges the problem exists and then does it anyway, which some people found clever and others found kind of insulting. I honestly think it's a little insulting because, like, I feel like you at least have the defense that people are ignorant that they didn't think about it, but you obviously were thinking about it and you did it anyways. Like, I guess it's kind of funny, but I don't know. It's not that funny. Either way, the point was made. Horror has a bad habit of treating minority characters as expendable. Deep Blue Sea did something slightly different. Samuel L. Jackson is in this movie about killer sharks, and he's the biggest star in the cast. Usually that means you survive. Why? Well, they spent a lot of money on you, so they better get their budget's worth. So you'd think that they're gonna survive, right? Well, wrong. Halfway through the film, he's given this big inspirational speech about survival and teamwork, and a shark jumps out of the water and eats him. It's shocking because you don't expect the main star to die like that. But here's the thing. Another black character, LL Cool J, actually survives the whole movie. He makes it to the end, and people specifically noted this as unusual because it was so rare to see. That's the problem though. It shouldn't be notable when a black character lives. That should just be normal. But horror in the beginning spent so many decades killing off minority characters characters first that when someone survives, it's treated as surprising. We don't see this issue as much anymore, but you go back, it's there quite a bit. So representation issues are a little more serious, but haunted dolls are just annoying at this point. Dolls are supposed to be cute. They're toys for kids, but somewhere along the way, horror decided that actually dolls are terrifying and we should make movies about them murdering people. For a while, that worked. The first time you see a doll moving on its own or staring at you with those dead glass eyes, it's unsettling. The problem is Hollywood made about 600 doll movies after that, and now nobody's scared anymore. We're just tired. Child's Play from 1988 created Chucky, who's probably the most famous evil doll in existence. A serial killer's soul gets trapped in a good guy doll and goes on a murder spree. The movie works because Chucky has personality. He's not just standing there looking creepy. He's actively running around stabbing people and making jokes about it. He's got Brad Dourif's voice, which helps sell the idea that there's an actual murderous person inside the doll. The sequels got more comedic over time, and Chucky became less scary and more of a pop culture icon, which is fine, but it also means he's not exactly keeping anyone up at night anymore. Like, if you're a kid these days and you're afraid of Chucky, I'm laughing at you. 20 years ago, I would have understood it a bit more. Then we got Annabelle in 2014, which tried to make dolls scary again. The movie's about this vintage doll that's got a demon attached to it, because of course it does. And the whole thing is just jump scares and the doll sitting in different places looking ominous. That's it. That's the movie. The doll doesn't even move on camera. It just shows up in the background and we're supposed to be freaked out. Some people found it creepy, and those people are fucking babies. A lot of audiences, though, like me, were more bored than scared. We've seen creepy dolls before. We've seen them in the Twilight Zone, in Poltergeist, in Puppet Master, in Dead Silence, and blah blah blah, and blah blah blah. Stupid! There's only so many times you can watch a doll exist menacingly before you start wondering if maybe horror should find a new thing to be afraid of. You want a doll movie that is actually good? Look at The Monkey. Technically, that is a doll movie. It's basically a monkey doll that's evil. Do it like that. Don't do the crappy stuff. Dolls lost their scare factor years ago, but dream endings remain universally hated. You want to know the fastest way to make an audience hate your movie? Spend 90 minutes building tension and scares, get everyone invested in the story, and then reveal that none of it actually happened. It was all a dream, or a hallucination, or a coma fantasy. Whatever excuse you want to use, the result is the same. You just told your audience that the time they spent watching your movie was completely pointless because nothing that happened mattered. People despise this ending so much that it basically became a warning sign. If someone says a horror movie has a dream twist, half the potential audience won't even bother watching. Literally, this isn't a horror movie. It could be, technically, but Mario Galaxy #1. I was a kid when I first played it, and I got so mad when I realized the whole thing was a damn dream. Come on, it's just lazy writing. Soul Survivors from 2001 is the perfect example of how badly this can backfire. The whole movie follows a girl having these scary experiences after a car accident. There's supernatural stuff happening, people are chasing her, nothing makes sense. Then at the end, she wakes up in a hospital and you find out the entire movie was her brain doing weird things while she was unconscious. Everything you just watched was fake. Audiences hated it. Critics tore it apart. The movie gets brought up constantly as one of the worst examples of this trope because it invalidates everything. There's no payoff, no resolution, just, oh, by the way, none of this was real. Just like me and my ex-wife Becky's love. The Turning from 2020 did something similar and people were furious. The movie builds up all of this tension about a haunted house and whether the governess is going crazy or if ghosts are real. And then it just ends abruptly with this weird implication that maybe it was all in her head, but also maybe not. But also, we're not going to explain anything. The non-ending made audiences feel cheated. They showed up for a ghost story and got homework instead. When the credits rolled, people in theaters were genuinely angry. That's how badly the dream twist can ruin a movie. Which brings me to the point where I say, none of this is real. It's time for you to wake up. This entire YouTube video was a dream. Anyways, if you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to give it a like and comment down below other horror movie tropes you hate. Absolutely despise. I want to know what makes everyone else mad too. Subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this and hit the hype button so that this video can get sent to more people just like you. And if you want to watch another one of my videos right now, you can click the video on screen.